We found out a while ago. Probably a couple months ago.
But apparently they haven't done a review of the walkable cross country that's on fire. So I guess we're not going to do
So,
that.
wait till. What? Why?
They got a team shift, but I have one class up here every day.
So they had a bunch of kids go because you were down there because of the mutual.
Just the way it works out.
For some reason, I thought they said, "Hey, Mr. Williams, I see some green dots down there."
Maybe they didn't think people were going to be up there. Mama.
You know what? You can always step.
Good evening and welcome to Newark High School. My name is Mike McGavis. I'm the physical education teacher and football and baseball coach here in Newark. I'd like to welcome everyone. Mr. Corey, I'd like to thank Mr. Corey, our Director of Athletics and PE. He just wanted me to make a quick reminder that we socially distance and we leave our masks on unless we're at the microphone. If we have some on the fence line, the deck, too, if we need more. I know there's dots on the bleachers as well. With that, I would like to introduce Pastor Dan.
Good evening. I'm Pastor Dan Corritore. I'm a retired pastor who had served in North Rose. But my connection with Bob is that we grew up in the Webster United Methodist Church. We graduated together at Schrader High School in Webster. So I'm very honored to be here this evening to share in this celebration. Let us join in prayer. Eternal, in love you created the world around us, and in love you created each one of us. Today, we gather to celebrate the life of Bob Binggeli, here in a place he loved. We remember him as a husband, a father, a brother and uncle, a teacher, and a coach, a colleague, a friend. We give you thanks for his life, for all the ways in which he blessed our lives, for the good times we spent together, the things he taught us, the experiences we shared. We pray that you will comfort us in the midst of our grief, that you will give us peace in your promise of eternal home in heaven, and that you will strengthen us to pass on to others all the lessons and joy that Bob passed on to us. Until that day, when at last we will join Bob and all our friends and family in heaven, through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
I didn't know that. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and again, welcome to the Newark Stadium. It's great to see everybody here. Wow, this is amazing. I love all those, Hawaiian shirts out there. Bob spent most of his Newark coaching career here between the wrestling room over there, which was very important to him, and the track and the football field, which you can find him here anytime. If you get a chance to look, the soccer field is behind lacrosse fields. This is a beautiful complex, and I think he had a little bit to do with each one of them. So it makes sense that we honor his life here. As an educator and coach, he always pushed students and family, friends, parents to make good choices. Tonight we need to respect his values, so we ask you to wear a mask and respect social distancing at all times. Thank you. Kelsey? And Kayla? Okay, I do that a lot. Would like to thank everyone who helped make tonight possible, especially Matt Cook, Chris Corey, the McGavis family, Jim Miranda, Will Bean, and the many, many educators, coaches, students, friends, and family, and everyone at Newark schools, and especially the Newark community. Your support was very much needed for my family and I, and we really do appreciate all the food that I still have some in my freezer. And your support was just wonderful. Thank you. Clipboards and pencils that you get, if you have a little memory that you haven't expressed to us or written down, please write it on that, and we'll collect the clipboards and pencils and everything on the way out. And we also have a little packet of seeds for you that read, this doesn't like me. A good life leaves behind seeds that keep on growing again. So please plant those seeds next spring, not now. And please remember Bob. And again, wear your mask at all times for the safety of others until you get to your cars. Thank you. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, we wouldn't have to worry about this, but if Bob and Andy Hake were still painting houses, they figured out all the problems of the world and could solve them. So If Andy and Bob were still around, we wouldn't have this problem. Thank you. Okay. And turn your attention to the right.
Hello everyone, this is former Buffalo Bill linebacker Chris Gilman. I know you're all gathering honoring Coach Bing, and I was thinking about Coach Bing and leadership, and there's two types of leaders. There's a leader that leads with fear. If you're a leader that leads with fear, that means you inspire fear. I believe Coach Bing, from what I understand and the conversation that I had with him and what people tell me, was a leader that led with courage. So when you lead with courage, you inspire courage. And from everything I could tell, he was nothing but courageous. And I think when you look at people and we say that it's unfair that somebody's taken from us, yes it is. It's unfair, but it's also something that we can learn from. And the best way, at least from my experience, what I learned is a lot of valuable lessons. One, first lesson is to never use someone you love's death as an excuse for anything, but we always use it for motivation in everything that we do. And I think the other thing that you take away is that to honor that person, to honor them how you live, to honor them how you continue fighting cancer, how you continue fighting whatever you do, to live an inspired life and to live a life of service. I believe Coach Bing did that as a coach, and I know he did that as a parent. I wish you all the best. God bless you all. Take care.
I think Chris Spielman hit the nail on the head with Bing with the love, led with love. It's an honor for me to speak tonight as we celebrate the amazing life of Mr. Bob Binggeli, or as we affectionately call him, Bing, or simply Bing. Bing represented the strongest aspects of family, life, love, laughter, and legacy. After college, where he was a wrestler at Portland State, receiving 2 degrees, prepared him for a lifetime of success as a teacher and a coach. When you look at his long coaching history, as I'm here to talk about, it's extensive. Looking back, by my count, he has coached 6 different sports across 5 different school districts in 2 different states. He's coached at the modified, freshman, JV, and varsity levels. Between 1978 and 1981, Bing began his coaching career at Penfield and Rush Henrietta, working with the football programs at the freshman, JV, and varsity levels, and also coached varsity wrestling, varsity track, and JV wrestling. In 1981 at North Rose Wolcott, he served as the varsity wrestling coach and varsity boys track coach. 1982, Coach Bing started teaching and coaching in Newark. He taught and coached here in 4 different decades, the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and 2010, varsity wrestling, varsity boys track, varsity girls soccer, varsity girls lacrosse, JV and varsity football, JV wrestling, modified girls volleyball, modified track, and modified girls lacrosse. This is an appropriate place for us to celebrate his life, as Dale mentioned. The fields where he coached, the wrestling room behind the bleachers over there, the track. He loved coming to graduation and watching our students graduate. One of his favorite things right here on this field, where he impacted so many student athletes. They say that a coach can influence more people in a year than most people can influence over a lifetime. As a health teacher and as a coach, Bing influenced thousands of people over his 40-plus years of teaching and coaching. When I think about Bing, I think about his genuine, kind, compassionate, humble personality. His sense of humor was unbelievable. I think about his laughter, that laugh. I can still hear him laugh. So many great times over the years, coaching football together, the highs of winning and the lows of losing. The summer heat, the grind of two-a-days, double sessions, feelings after a big program win and lows after a tough loss. When you coach together, you build that camaraderie that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. The grind, the struggle, all the time you put in, Bing loved all of that. He was all in. He cared about every one of his students and every one of his players. Kids need trusted adults who they can count on, who will consistently be present in their lives, and Coach Bing was that guy. He saw potential in his students and in his players that they may not have seen in themselves. He believed in them and helped them to reach their potential and reach their goals. He could connect with any player, any student. He often helped players who were struggling. He always gave them encouragement. He took many players under his wing and guided them and helped keep them going when times were tough. While he was busy here at the school, teaching and coaching, his family always came first. In September 1999, he took some time off from coaching football so he could be there for his daughters as they were entering middle school and were starting to play modified sports. I would like to read some excerpts from a letter that he wrote to me and to us in our football program as to tell us why he was stepping away at that time. So these are his words. Hey brother, football means a great deal to me and always will. I will never forget what I've learned about sports, myself, and life through football. Sports have always played a big role in my life, and I've always been thankful for my parents' support of me as an athlete and as a coach. They never missed an athletic event when I was in sports and shared in all my triumphs and disappointments. Their support and encouragement meant and still means a great deal to me. I want to do the same with my daughters. One of my roles I'm involved in is that of a parent. I feel that this is the most important job that I'm doing at this point in my life. My family is very important to me, and I want to do everything I can to help my daughters grow up. In that same letter, he included words to the team toward the end of the letter. He said, "You already know what it takes to win. Hard work, listening to your coaches, listening to each other, working together, taking pride in what you do, and being relentless. Being relentless is an important quality to work at and will take you through all the tough and good times throughout your life. You have total control of how relentless you want to be, regardless of any circumstance. During your life, you may not control everything that happens to you. However, you do have control of your attitude when you face a certain situation. Make persistence and being relentless qualities that you are made of." While he was coaching his daughters, he always remained part of our football program, from everything from being a TV announcer, winning our Newark Gridiron 12th Man Award, stopping by practice, stopping by the coach's office. He came back to coaching in 2016, years later when the time was right, and he wanted to get back involved again. And he told me he was so happy that he did that. A highlight was in 2017, while he was still coaching football here in the fall and wrestling in the winter in Newark. He had the highlight of his coaching career when he traveled out to Denver to coach Denver North High School in Colorado with Kelsey, the Vikings girls lacrosse team. He was so proud, he just lit up every time he talked about that experience. His last 2 years coaching here were two of our best years we ever had, and he went out on a high note, and he felt really good about that. Our JV team was 13-2 in 2 league championships. He was very happy to go out on a high note from football, and he was looking forward very much to the next chapter of his life. I had the pleasure to know Bing for 26 years. He helped me teach my first class in Newark. It was first period health class for middle school boys and girls. He really bailed me out because as a phys ed guy, I was not prepared for that. And he did not let me just sink. He stayed with me, and we team taught that, which means he did it and taught an extra class. He coached with us here my first 5 years as a head coach, and as a young coach, I was very lucky to have someone like him with his experience to help guide me. His sense of humor, his patience, humility, kindness, fairness, and loyalty were second to none. I miss him so much, but I will keep his memory alive. So many stories, great friend, always lifting others up around him. I was happy he was able to teach my daughter's middle school health class when he filled in as a long-term sub, and it was during football season. And on game day, he could ask my girls, "What's your mom making for dinner tonight?" Because win or lose, we had all the coaches over to rehash the game and watch the news highlights of the other high school games. Great food, great laughs, lots of memories. When he coached and when he stopped coaching, he was always around. He was always part of our family. He liked to show up at the coach's office with apples and just sit down and put his feet up after he retired. And we would all come down as coaches, and the stress of our day and any problems that he'd have, he would just look at us and smile and laugh. Being retired, he would, in his own unique way, just calm us down after we vented a little bit and got ready for practice. After practices were some of the favorite times. On most days, we would just sit around the coach's office and joke and bust on each other as a group. And it was just pure laughter. We all laughed so much. When my mother died, he told me that my mom would, quote, live through my actions, my memories, and in my daily thoughts. He said, throughout everything, I'm reminded to be more like her. I will never forget her. Well, Bing taught me a lot, and I'm reminded to be more like him. He was unselfish. He had his priorities in order, family first. He was always there for his family. He was a warrior throughout life, right up until the end. He battled, and he was relentless. He never gave up. The last night of his life, on one of our many coaching threads of texting, I sent Bing and Coach Herto a Chris Spielman quote. Football is a direct reflection of life. There are wins, there are losses. You get knocked down, you get back up. Bing loved it, and then replied to me and Coach Herto to watch the movie Greater on Netflix. True story about a walk-on who became an All-American. Herto would love this kid, grinder through and through. Bing always pulled for the underdog. That was his last night. But during my last phone call with Bing, at the start of the shutdown of the pandemic, he told me he had just started his treatment. I was telling him that all the coaches wanted to come and see him, but we didn't want to get him sick, and we were all afraid that we were going to get him sick. He understood. At the end of the conversation, he said, I love you. I said, I love you too, Bing. Can't say enough about how much Coach Bing meant to me, such a great human being. Just a quote that comes to mind, I read on Twitter, a guy named John Gordon, resonates with me as I think about Bing. He said, your legacy is carried on by lives touched and stories told. Give people great stories to tell about you. Well, Bob Bingley certainly did that. What a legacy he has left in his own children and all of his former students and athletes. He made a difference in this world. He made this world a better place. May God bless the Bingley family always, and may God bless Bing.
It appears as though I'm unprepared, but I found about 40 years of Bob's lesson plans right here in my pocket. And this is about it. I kid around because Bob always seemed a little less prepared than he really was. And I've been writing all day, and actually I was at softball today, and somebody said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm writing my memoirs. And I wasn't. But I first off want to thank Dale Lane, of course, and I want to thank Kelsey and Kayla, of course, for inviting me to be a part of speaking on behalf of Bing as a teacher. And it's funny because we have always kidded around about teaching in general, and how hilarious it is. And one of the things we've always kidded around about, I was a brand new teacher in 1998, and I wasn't a brand new teacher, I had taught someplace else. But Bob always reached out to the young ones early and often to find out we were okay. When Mike was talking about being a brand new health teacher, being a brand new teacher is terrifying. And kids are going to eat you up and spit you out, but Bob was going to find a way to make you not happen. And no matter what was going on, like, he would always kind of hooting and hollering for you. If you were just feeling like, I have no idea what to do today, and I had this great lesson plan, and the kids just devoured me. And he would say, no, that's not going to happen. Let's try this. And over the course of the years, he would always say, it's relationships, it's people over programs. We've all been teaching long enough, and all my teacher friends can say this. We have so many programs that have come and gone, so many things, ideas. We're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and this is going to fix education. And Bob would kind of laugh and just say, it's people over programs. And the way he would say it was just it was one of those things where you just needed to hear that it's true. And those of us who've been teaching a long time, we heard essential questions and learning targets, and we're going to learn this and we're going to learn that, and this is going to make education great. And he would just stop and say, it's you, it's not the program. And that's why I laugh. I laugh to myself all the time, because he used to talk about data, and he would do this. And he would make comments about data. And those of you who know me and know him, we would laugh about data. We've been in meetings. My favorite meeting experience with Bob was we were sitting in a meeting, and we had a young-ish principal, excited about being a principal, and all of a sudden his phone rings, and it's da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. Is that the NFL? It's the NFL? And he couldn't figure out how to turn his damn phone off. And it's ringing and ringing and ringing, and we're laughing and we're falling all over ourselves because Bob can't figure out how to turn his darn phone off. And it was right when you learn how to do the phone ring that's like funny, and you're just, and we were laughing so hard, and because he couldn't figure it out before, like, you know, and he couldn't turn it off, and he's running, and he's, you know, we laughed. But one of the things I know, like over the years, he invited me to Natural Helpers, and Natural Helpers was so much fun. And it's a canned-ish kind of program. It's one of those programs that's about like feeling good and learning about people and relationships. And we all rolled our eyes, and but we watched Bing, and Bing was like a natural. Bing was a natural with the Natural Helpers program, and I'm not kidding. So I was with the German teacher, and we were laughing and rolling our eyes, and he taught the Natural Helpers program like it was, like he just knew what to do and when to do it, and we use all the lingo still. That was in 1998, and I still say, I know someone who, we use these program lingo, and we laugh, and that night, it was 4 in the morning, all the instructors had gone to bed, and it was me, and Mrs. Hervick, and Mrs. Tucker, and we were in our little bunk room at Natural Helpers, and the kids were in bed, and we were laughing and cackling. All of a sudden, there was a pounding on the wall. It's time to go to bed. And it was kids. The kids sent us to bed because we were laughing, because we were making fun of your husband, of course. We were making fun of Bob, and we just couldn't stop. And we were using all the lingo, and we still use all the lingo. And we laugh, and we roll our eyes, and that was it. But one of the things I always liked about Bob, too, as years had gone on, and I'm just like, this is, like I said, this is it's a Bob Binggeli lesson plan. It's cursive, part print, it's something. One of the things, like, he always was he was way more organized than he seemed. And I think sometimes people would think, oh, Bob, you know, Bob was just winging it. He wasn't. He was very deliberate with his planning. He was very deliberate with what he was talking about. I one time went by, and there were a group of guys doing some presentations on STDs, and I was nervous, and they were like, come in, you have to see this presentation, and they did a little presentation, and the natural order and comfort level with how they were presenting the information he was teaching, it was great, and it wasn't something that, as a young teacher, you know, you might get nervous, and it was, here these kids were totally comfortable with that, and that was something that really just made me super envious of him as a teacher, that these kids were really comfortable with that. And he knew everybody, and if you ever had trouble with a kid, he'd say, oh, no, I know his grandpa, I went to high school with his grandpa, oh, I went to college with his uncle, and I know his cousin. He knows everybody on the Eastern Seaboard, everybody. So we all know that. I know everybody. And we always laugh about my own children, and my own kids. As late as February of this year, my son was at the wrestling tournament. He was at the takedown tournament in Mid-Lakes, and Bob showed up. And he was the one who gave my son's not crazy about wrestling. He's like, you have to stick with wrestling. It's such a good sport. And he really just like put it out to him and said, you have to keep wrestling. And it's just such a great sport. Well, of course, anybody who knows wrestling. But one of the things, there was I had a kid in my room a bunch of years ago who was ready for wrestling practice, and he was kind of talking a little bit of garbage to Bing, just kind of giving him the lip, you know, like, come on, old man, come on, old man. Well, Bob just went over and dropped this kid to the ground like it was nobody's business. He was like, and I said, it was kind of before we all had iPhones, and to this day, I still see that as just such a moment in my life where I was like, oh my God, here's a kid who was lipping at an older guy, and he just dropped him, and it was great. So it was just one of those moments in my life. I've been really mad at Bing since April. I know we all have. We're all very mad at Bob. And one of the reasons I'm mad at him is because one of the very first politically charged memes I received was from Bob. And it was like before the iPhones. And it was from you. It was copied to me and sent to me. And every time I see politics, I want to copy it and I want to send it to him. And we just like love the politics stuff and we just have a lot of fun about it. But one of the very first political memes I received was from him. And I'm trying to think, I got a whole Bob Binggeli lesson plan here. Oh my gosh, he went to Quebec with us. And what was hilarious about the year he went with us in 2012 is that he was not a young dude. And he was the only one I knew who could keep up with us. So he shows up. I didn't even know if he told me he was going. I asked him if he had a passport and he shows up. And he's got his full zip-up Carhartt suit on. Shows up. He destroyed Quebec. He was like frat boy 2.0 in Quebec. And I have to tell you, there's this thing called Everest, and it's like, you know, to talk about your Everest. And Bob Binggeli climbed up Everest with this tube and tubed down Everest. And I think everybody in Canada heard him hollering down the whole thing. He was hollering down the whole way. And then he came down and he goes, "All right, nerds, let's head up, we're doing it again." And he went right back up and we did it again. And he just loved Quebec. And I think he slept the whole way home, but he really enjoyed it. Full adrenaline, he loved everything about it. But one of the things, like when we get back to Bing, like Bing in general, like when we get back, Bing was always somebody you went to for your problems and your issues and anything going on. However, one of the things about Bob, you couldn't just spew your problems to Bob and have that be it. Bob would turn around and then hold you accountable for that. And he always followed up with you. Whenever you had something going on, he would follow up with you and say, "How did you handle that?" And it was always one of those things that stuck, like, oh, darn it, I just wanted to complain to somebody. But he held you accountable and then came back and made sure you were fixing it. And that was one of those things that today when I woke up, I was like, oh, you know, sometimes you would talk to Bing, you'd need help, but then he would somehow hold you accountable for your problems. And that's one of the things with teaching. He would always come back and say, yeah, you got to fix this. You got to find a way to do that. And he wasn't going to give you the answers to those things. But when it's all said and done with teaching, and I taught with him for 20 years, and one of the things that I really, before I get to like his lifetime, but when we talk about all the things with education, he said, you nod, you roll your eyes, you close your door, and you do what you're going to do with your kids, for your kids. And those kids are the most important people, and nothing else. And he always said, just be there for your students. Everything else will fall into place. And he's right. And that's the thing, I still remember that whenever anybody's trying to show me a new thing after 27 years of teaching, and they say, he said, just nod, you turn around, you roll your eyes, close your door, and do your thing. And he's right, because we all do that. And that's why our kids love us. And 64 is so young to pass. And one of the things when I heard he had passed, I was so upset. And one of the things we were talking about, like appreciating everything, appreciating life. He lived like 3 lifetimes. He was always at 3 places at once. He was always there, and no matter what was going on, he was on his way from somewhere to be somewhere. And every time I'd call him on the phone, he's like, I'm in Erie, but I'll be there in like an hour and a half. Are you guys getting together? Yeah, I'll be there. So he was always there. And that's what I always say, like, you know, if he didn't seem to live long enough, I mean, he obviously didn't live long enough, but he lived like 3 lifetimes. He was always like at 3 places at once, wouldn't you say? But I always have to say, Bob always said, just be present, and he's not going to tell you, he never told you what you wanted to hear. He held you accountable for your life, and hopefully we all do that. Thank you.
I'm Tina Reed, a family friend. There are 3 kinds of people in this world. There are those who make it worse, those who leave it almost the same way as they found it, and those who make it better. The first often go into politics. The second, they're ordinary folks like you and I. And the third, they're that rare, gifted, singular people who make the world a truly better place for all of us. Bob Binggeli has a certified place in that third category. As most of you know, Bob lived by a mantra: adjust, adapt, overcome. He lived and encouraged these values. Bob was that son who sat up all night with his mother, all night long in the hospital, and with his father before he left to coach a wrestling match the whole next day after having no sleep. He made his parents matter and never let them forget that. Bob was a great son. Bob was the brother who supported his siblings 100% of the time. He was the oldest of the Binggeli clan and certainly first in line for all the fun and cahoots. Bob also knew when it was time to be the role model to do the right thing, and he did. And the family saw those values and adapted. Bob was the uncle who offered advice, fun, and inspiration to his nieces and nephews. He was front and center whenever they were involved in an event. It was not at all unusual to hear that Bob was attending one of their sporting events or one of their dances or one of their anything, despite it being a long drive. He was there and they knew it. Bob was able to encourage and inspire just by his presence and beaming smile. Bob was the teacher who all teachers, young and old, recognized as that teacher who should have been a teacher. He was able to teach every student, the bright and motivated, as well as those who struggled. He gave every student the opportunity to achieve. Bob was that teacher who gave in and out of the classroom. Bob maintained relationships with students long after they left the middle school and even after high school. He was in Colorado with his family and flew home for Newark High School graduation because those students mattered to him. He was that teacher. Bob was that coach who was able to coach the total athlete emotionally and physically, as well as athletically. He knew when to push and when to back off. He liked to win, but the bottom line was the athlete. He loved those underdogs that he could take from being unskilled to feeling like they were a contributing member of that team. And they were. Bob was keen on teaching those fundamental skills to help an athlete strive. Bob was that friend we all miss so much already. He was a friend who was able to give and not make it seem like he was making a sacrifice, even if he was. On a personal level, Bob was there for my kids when they needed that positive male influence. He was that guy that visited Aunt Peg in Myrtle Beach when her nephew couldn't. He was that guy who went in the middle of the night to pick up a friend at the airport. He was that guy who invited his wife's best friend to vacation with them. Me. The list is endless, but you get the point. Bob was that guy who loved to talk. Many times when I needed to call Dale, I had to sit and question, how much time do I have? Because I called the landline and Bob answers, I'm going to talk. And you knew you were going to have that conversation first. I so miss those phone calls. He liked to talk sports, education, world news, and yes, politics. Bob was that father who adored his girls, Smeltzer and K-Bear. He was a father who gave up his own love of coaching to be available to support his daughters when they were competing as athletes. He never missed an event. Many times he served as their coach, especially during those summer months when no one else was available. Bob was that father who went and coached with Kelsey in Colorado and is forever known there as Papa Lax. What a role model for Kelsey as a coach, a talent she certainly cherishes. Bob is that father who drove to Boston for water polo matches and swim meets. He and Dale drove all over New England to watch Kayla slam down the mountains in a sea race. Bob was that father who cried at that first look at their wedding. Bob was that father who was so proud to just be a father. And it looks to me like he and Dale raised some pretty outstanding daughters. Bob was that husband who recognized the value of Dale way back in those days at courtroom. Together they built a family with integrity and pride. Bob was that husband who loved his wife. Countless times we would be out and the phone would ring and Dale would say, it's Bob, come on. Every time she'd put it on speaker and he'd say, hey, Bang, hey, hon, you with Tina? Yeah. What are you two up to? Yeah, I'll see you whenever you get home. And that was the end of it. Bob was the rare husband who encouraged his wife to be who she was and never tried to change that. Together, they traveled all over the U.S. to visit their love of all the national parks. They camped and encountered many adventures. Many were comical after a little time passed. They visited Kelsey in Chile and brought back many pictures, and Bob liked to talk about each picture. And there were 2,500 pictures. He was always open for adventure and never let many obstacles prevent a good time. Bob was that kind of husband, loving, encouraging, and a good time. Bob was that guy, the one that we all aspired to be like. He was that guy, but never really knew it because he just was. So unassuming. Yeah. That rare individual who demonstrated empathy and gratitude. He was a guy who had such a positive impact on anyone he encountered. So Bob, you have been loved. You leave a legacy that will never be forgotten. In Bob's honor, when you find yourself in that tough situation, remember, adjust, adapt, and overcome.
My first few readings are actually, my first one is from my brother Ben. My brother Rob Binggeli was born the oldest of 6 children in 1956. Mom and Dad were married just 6 months before Rob was born. We did not figure out the math until much later on in life. I was born 11 months after Rob, so technically I am his Irish twin. Our family always called him Rob or Robbie. Bob was our dad's name. Over the years, he decided he preferred to be called Bob, but our immediate family still called him Rob. While in college at Cortland, another nickname for him was Wild Man, or Wild for short. I am sure that name was based on some shenanigans that he was involved in during his days in college, especially his fraternity, Beta. Rob was loyal to his fraternity and stayed both in touch with many of his members throughout his adult life. Growing up, Rob was my first friend. We stayed close friends throughout life. You can always tell your best friends anything. When we talked on the phone or during our get-togethers, it was as if we continued our conversation right where we left off. We shared many experiences growing up: Boy Scouts, hunting, fishing, motorcycles, concerts, and wrestling. Of these, wrestling took a large part of his life. Rob wrestled at Cortland, and after college, he was involved in coaching wrestling for the rest of his adult life, even after he retired from teaching. He picked up coaching football during his early teaching career as well. I am sure many of the athletes that he coached have lasting memories. Rob loved his family dearly, and he was involved in family activities. As we got older and had families of our own, he would be involved not only in his girls' sport activities, but also whatever sports his nieces and nephews were into. This includes traveling to and from watching hockey, basketball, lacrosse, football, soccer, and dance. Rob was the eternal optimist. He would always underestimate the time it took to do every job. I remember helping Rob and Dale work on their log cabin they built in Newark. Rob would always optimistically plan on how long to complete the next phase of construction, and invariably the completion of that phase would slide. They persevered through, and that log cabin eventually got built. I guess in the scheme of things, that it is better than being a pessimist. Rob was passionate about his teaching. He loved his job, the school, his fellow teachers, and most of all, his students. He truly had a deep connection to many of them, even after they graduated high school. Rob could talk to anybody. Many times, whether it was at Home Depot, the tackle shop, the grocery store, he would strike up a conversation with a stranger. He had an easygoing personality. In closing, I was privileged to grow up and remain close with Rob. He touched many lives of all he interfaced with. He was truly a wonderful person and is greatly missed. I love you, Rob. Till we meet again. This is from my brother Brad. Rob was number one son, not just in order of being born. He displayed great humility in every aspect of his life, and his positive attitude was infectious. I always admired how he would try to put himself in people's shoes in order to be compassionate to what anyone was going through in their life, no matter if they were students, players, or family. He was immensely proud of his family, his wife, daughters, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, and the athletes he coached. Rob was always ready and willing to talk to all students, players, and acquaintances that he ran into. He always took the time to find out how they were doing and always ready to provide advice. Rob was a fantastic listener. I asked Dale how they met, and she said he was a great listener to her jokes, both good and bad. He used to say that he got more out of his students and players than they got out of him. I know that most of people would beg to differ. He was a great father figure to many, most definitely a second father to me. Love you always until we meet again. Now this one's nice. I'm going to try my best to keep that brief. This will be difficult as it is impossible to sum up what an amazing man my brother was in just a few words. Also, we all know that Rob led by example and he loved to talk. Let's just say I definitely follow in his footsteps. Over the last 6 months, I've done a lot of reading and soul searching in an attempt to learn how to cope with this tremendous loss. Tonight, I want to share a poem I came across. It's entitled The Weaver. My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I do not choose the colors, he worketh steadily. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent, and the shuttle cease to fly, will God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the skillful weaver's hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. As I look back on the events of my life, with the exception of my parents, the one consistent person beside me has been my brother Rob. He has always been at my side as my personal canvas has been created. During the dark threads, life's difficulties and challenges, including medical issues, personal conflicts, surgeries, and the illnesses and deaths of our parents, Rob remained my ever-caring and loyal brother, even during the dark times of his illness, putting aside all of his current challenges, remaining selfless as always, and always asking about how my day was and how I was doing. And ending every phone call or visit with a "I love you," and never a goodbye, but rather a "see you later." Good day. And who could forget the unbelievable bear hugs, which is a skill that I am so grateful he passed on to his beautiful daughters, Kelsey and Kayla. Rob was also with me during the threads of gold and silver. He was there when Kelsey and I went to get our first and matching tattoos together. He decided to join in on the fun, and he got one on his shoulder, the Chinese symbol for courage. How appropriate that was. Rob was there for the graduations, the weddings, including Ron and my wedding, where he did his infamous Hans impersonation, and warned Ron that he needed to watch his P's and Q's, and not to be a girly man, because otherwise Bridget will terminate you, squish you like a little bug. Nowhere near as good as the house he set up. He was the first visitor at the hospital when I had each of my 3 kids. Rob was their much beloved uncle, their strongest cheerleader, and the best godfather that Dalton could ever have asked for. He was a highlight of every family holiday, especially at Binggeli Christmas, where he would pour the sparkling grape juice, and he would go around, each of us would go around the room and say what we were individually thankful for, a tradition I look forward to carrying on for many years to come. I thank him so much for being a consistent part of my weaving, my canvas, both the dark threads and the threads of gold and silver. One last thing I wanted to share with you here tonight was one of my last conversations with Rob. It happened on the Sunday before he passed, Easter Sunday. I received a call that afternoon from Kelsey that stated her father wasn't having a very good day. I went over and took off my sister's hat for a little bit and replaced it with my nursing cap, tended to his needs, and got him settled and comfortable. Kelsey and Dale had stepped out for a few minutes, and it was just Rob and I in the room. I asked Rob, "How are you doing?" And he responded, "Oh, I'm okay." I knew too much medically, and I asked him again, "No, Rob, how are you really doing?" He looked at me and said with such a strong voice, a voice I hadn't heard in a couple months, "Bridget, I want to fight. I want to ring that bell." I said, "Okay then. You have all of our support. Let's fight." He continued to fight, never giving up, never losing hope or his faith. A few days later on that Thursday, Rob rang that bell. His fight here on earth was done. However, his work here on earth continues. His legacy lives on in each and every one of us. We need to honor him and his memory by living a life like he did, loving like he did, remaining selfless and always putting others first like he did, attempting to have a positive impact on every life we touch like he did, making a difference in this world like he did. Most importantly, living life by example like he did, forever remembering his mantra of adjust, adapt, overcome. Thank you, Rob, for being the most amazing brother, husband, father, son, teacher, coach, friend, and overall human being. I am forever blessed that you were in my life. I love you. See you later. Good day.
Well, I don't like to talk. Fortunately, grew up in a family of, and thank you so much for sharing everything about Bob. I didn't know him as well as an adult as I would like to. Education Bob is all about helping people discover their better selves. And he did this via relentless encouragement and unending positivity, both of which were offered or rather thrust upon you, whether you requested them or not. You've heard about some of the many, many examples of this from everybody today. And again, I thank speakers tonight for teaching us all so much about Bob. A while ago, I wrote Rob to tell him I had a student athlete requested me or asked that I be her professor to be recognized at a ceremony and presented a game ball. Before I knew what was happening, he said he would be there. And he drove 6 hours each way to be there for this cheesy little 5-second ceremonial thing. And he did it just to make it more meaningful to me and to let me to demonstrate that I have a champion that was willing to share in that small bit of success. Bob was the uncle who high-fived my child, recited math facts, time and time again. He never stopped. He never tired of finding ways to encourage these pathways to success. As Bridget mentioned, the huge family gatherings of the Bingleys, Bob always mandated participation in the session where each of us made a statement about what we were thankful for the past year. And some of us rebelled inwardly or perhaps a little bit more openly against doing this type of compelled performance. Didn't bother Bob. Didn't deter him in the least. We did it anyway. And in reality, Bob was again teaching us how to discover our better selves. Because when we manage to live life with an attitude of gratefulness, we do so, we live a life in peace. And I'm very grateful for my brother Bob. I love him, and I miss him, always.
Rob was my oldest brother. He was also my big brother. Big smile, big presence, big personality, big heart, big role model. Our honorary brother, either 4A or 4B, however we call it, Bob Snover said it best. You take all the best qualities of our mom and all the best qualities of our dad and mesh them together. That was Rob. A very high compliment indeed. Unfortunately, there may have been one or two bad qualities, like procrastination. I often joke that Rob was the greatest underestimator of time, but after reading the many postings on social media that his family, friends, students, fellow teachers, and coaches posted, the posts often started with my favorite teacher or Coach Bing and how they ran into him at a Walmart or a Wegmans or wherever. Rob would always ask, how's the family? How's school? How's your team doing? How's life? It would never be a few-minute conversation, but each would be amazed that Rob always had the time to listen and talk some more. So maybe Rob actually made the best of his time. He was just making sure that he made enough time for everyone. Being an oldest brother, I always liken a lot to those of us who had the last names that start with the letter A or B, at least when I was in school. If teachers went alphabetically, we were always the first ones that were called on. Our desk was always placed in front of the teacher, and we were always the first one to attempt anything in gym. That was Rob his whole life. He was the first one to go to school. He became a flag bearer, first one to go out for a team sport, first one to graduate high school, and go away to college. He was also the first to get married and the first one to have a child, although it be by only 13 days. He blazed the trail to make it easier for my brothers and sisters to follow. An example of us following him early on in life was Thanksgiving. When we were very young, we would always go to our Grandma Stevens. On occasion, my parents would make it a long weekend. This particular time, my mom forgot to pack our pajamas. Back then, that's all you slept in. As my mom worried what to do as bedtime was arriving, we were all sitting around watching TV. Rob comes to the living room wearing his tighty whities and his t-shirt. Oops, hold on, I got out of it. Hold on. His tighty whities and a white t-shirt. Sat on the couch and just started watching TV. Figuring if Rob could come downstairs in front of all our cousins in his undies, I guess we can too. Rob was so easy to talk to and always willing to listen. I can see why he was so well liked by all his students. It was the same with his family. I remember I just finished high school and Rob had just graduated at Cortland. The family was vacationing in Myrtle Beach and Rob drove down to meet us. I told him how I smuggled us some cigars on the trip. At nighttime, Rob woke me up and was trying to find where the cigars were. So I got up, grabbed them, and we decided to walk to the beach. We sat on the beach for hours, talking, smoking our cigars, figuring out life. At this time, he had met Dale, and even then, I think he knew she was the one. Rob and I had so many likes, both big Bills fans, the many games we attended together, our distaste for Tom Brady, our love for high school wrestling, with the last outing together was this past state qualifiers. Even though he threw the invite at 6 p.m. for the matches starting at 6:30, I met up with him. There was Rob. We enjoyed many family vacations. I got this all mixed up. and outings, especially with our kids being so only weeks apart in age. The many live concerts and shows we attended, especially on the Allman Brothers show, and then all the family functions, especially the family functions. Rob was all about family. He truly loved being a part of a large and close family, how he loved spending time with all of us. I could go on and on about the great moments we shared, or how great a husband, father, son, brother, friend he was to all of us, or how much me and I and all of us here miss him. Once again, a big brother, big smile, big presence, big personality, big heart. So I would like to do something with all of us here. I would like to do a little in-class participation project. I would like to ask all of us to stand up. Now, part of this, I would say, is kind of also similar to what Betsy and Bridget were talking about a little bit before. Rob started a tradition that he started with our family roughly 25 years ago. At Christmas time, when the six of us would get together and our families, he would encourage all of us to look back at the past year and express why we were thankful for, or what we were thankful for. Now, some of us, not always being into it, or we would hear some go, here we go, Uncle Rob's toast, or on occasion, silly thankful comments or toast, usually from my son Casey, for being thankful for Ticonderoga pencils number 2 and 3, and for Justin Bieber, who had a rough year. But Rob always took it seriously, always expressing his thankfulness for his wonderful wife Dale, his amazing daughters Kelsey and Kayla, and in recent years for their husbands Mike and Kurt. He would also throw in, who would have thought? I really like those two. I would really, and then he would also give thanks to our amazing parents and the rest of our family. So I challenge all of us standing here tonight to be thankful for family, friends, teachers, coaches, co-workers, and life itself. You don't need to wait till a holiday or any time is a good time to express those who mean the most. How thankful you are for them, and also thanking them for being a big part of your life. Like all of us here tonight, Rob was for us. I'm so thankful to have Rob in my life, and I'm sure I'm not the only one wishing that they had one more chance to tell Rob that in person. One last thing I would like to do, as we're all standing here, is that at one point or another, we all had Rob in our corner, cheering us on, shouting words of encouragement, inspiring us to do our best. I think it is only fitting, as we follow social distancing and correct protocol, we wake up the heavens above and we cheer, yell, hoot, holler, scream, clap, cheer, and applaud a life well lived. So I would like to, on the count of 3, and remember, this is an in-class participation project, that we will follow the lead, adjust, adapt, and overcome. So here's to a life well lived. Thank you, God bless, and love you, big brother.
Try not to be snotty. Well, this is not something I ever expected I would be doing at 33, but here we are.
I must say I feel thankful for this opportunity. Over the past couple years, Dad delivered 2 incredible Father of the Bride speeches on our behalf, as well as spoke at both of his parents' funerals. Dad loves to talk. And I'm honored to stand up here today to talk about what an incredible man our father was. I know all of you here today already know this. So thank you for bearing with me while I reiterate, repeat, and share it in my own words. Dad fell under several categories that have been touched upon today, and so I'm going to continue with the same theme. To start, Dad was a teacher. Please raise your hand if at some point in time you were a student in Mr. Binggeli's class or an athlete on his team. What made Dad an amazing teacher was he possessed the unique ability to connect with anyone he encountered, with immense authenticity, compassion, and in such a way that you felt you were the most important person in the room when he spoke with you. He loved working in the middle school, though growing up it was admittedly embarrassing, especially when your friends would come to you and tell you all about the topics Dad touched upon in 8th grade health class. I want to stress to everyone that we did not go home and watch diving board video. Kayla and I would spend Saturdays in school with Dad while he planned or graded. And I think deep down this is when I realized I wanted to become a teacher as well. I saw the hard work that went into his job, but also saw the dividends it paid. Because of him, I began to see school as a safe place. Dad loved giving students a safe place and helping kids make healthy choices. He loved seeing kids succeed and would do literally anything in his will to help them reach their potential. Growing up, I hated going to Wegmans with him because without fail, he would see 2 or 3 old students and proceed to stop and chat with each of them for 30 minutes. But he truly cared to know how they and their families were doing post-Newark Middle School. As most of you know, I myself turned out to be a teacher. This is my 10th year teaching, and so far I've taught at the elementary, high school, and college levels. This year, with a little push from Dad in the spring, I made the transition to middle school, and I haven't looked back. Although, it's hard for me to not be able to call him up and tell him about the immature but super entertaining thing the weird 7th grader said in class today. The day that Dad passed, I received a message on Facebook that read, "Your father was the only teacher that thought I was a good kid." The impact he's had on his students is so far-reaching, and this is the kind of teacher I strive to be. Dad was a coach. During his 40-year coaching career, he coached football, wrestling, soccer, lacrosse, track and field, and volleyball. As Coach Mack mentioned, he took a brief hiatus from coaching when I was in the 7th grade because he wanted to watch me and Kayla 3 years later compete. I know what a huge sacrifice this must have been because he was so passionate about coaching. I remember walking over to this football field from the old Kelly School, which is the middle school now, because he was my ride home from school. And I'd be grumpy because I'd have to wait forever for his practices to end. But it was at these practices that I realized what magical powers a coach held. Kids looked at Dad with respect and admiration and awe. He worked hard to teach his athletes to be relentless. Relentless was his favorite word. He wanted kids on his team to make persistence and being relentless qualities that they lived with every day on and off the field. He would tell his athletes not to sell themselves short by taking the easy way out and not working their hardest. After some experience in the coaching field, I can say with certainty that Dad was one of the few to actually practice what he preached. When I began coaching lacrosse in Denver, I would call Dad after practice to debrief, troubleshoot, and brainstorm ideas for practice the next day. During these conversations, without even realizing it, Dad coached me into becoming a better coach. And then the next year, he moved into my basement in Denver, and he was my assistant coach for the season. What a special experience that was. I'm sure you can guess who the good cop was on the coaching staff. And I'll give you a hint, it was not me. My girls loved him, and I learned so much. That year, Dad won Newark Football's Coach of the Year, and I was awarded Denver Public Schools Coach of the Year. And I find this no coincidence. I had the best mentor. He always talked about the importance of using sports as a vehicle to teach kids about life. And there's the same quote Coach Mack used. This was the last text message I ever received from him. It was a quote from Chris Billman. It said, "Football is a direct reflection of life. There are wins, there are losses. You get knocked down, you get back up." In hindsight, I truly believe coaching kept him with us longer. He coached football last fall and was coaching in wrestling in February. I think he was so active and healthy, the cancer didn't really slow him down until the very end. Finally, Dad was a family man. He was an incredible father that gave us a childhood many only dreamt of. He loved being a girl dad. He built us a tree fort in the woods and dug out a pool for us to use in the summer. He carved out toboggan trails and warmed up the car for us before school in the winter. He took us to Bills games and Susan Tedeschi concerts. He taught us how to cast our fishing pole in the backyard with just a sinker tied to the line. He raised us on the Allman Brothers and the Beatles and the good stuff. He taught us the importance of making an informed opinion and how being a good person to others is imperative to any functioning society. As a child, I always viewed Dad as some sort of fairy tale protagonist of mythic proportions. I wrote an acrostic poem in the first grade that described Robert Dad as rocking, awkward, with an O. Rocking, awkward, best ever, rowdy tooting, dependable, agile dandy. As an adult, my vantage point has not changed too much, although I wouldn't call him agile. Dad certainly was as dependable and dandy as they come. He provided Kayla and I experiences that would shape us as human beings and as women. Mom and Dad wanted to raise strong, independent daughters, and I know I'm biased, but I like to think they did a pretty good job. I wasn't the easiest child either. I used to get so embarrassed when Dad would tell me he's proud of me. And I have to say, there isn't much I wouldn't give to hear Dad say he's proud of me today. He empowered me and Kayla to develop a strong sense of resilience. I have a letter he wrote that says, "During your life, you do not have control over everything that happens to you. However, you do have total control of what your attitude is when you face a situation." I remember clear as day the first time he talked to me about being resilient. We were in the car on the way to school in the morning, and he talked about how his best friend Andy was going to show resilience despite his recent diagnosis with cancer. Another instance that stands out was during summer. The summer I spent at home on the couch after knee surgery. I was feeling particularly sorry for myself, and he sat next to me and told me I needed to work hard, get hungry, and get back, and I'll be stronger than before. As usual, he was right. He showed us that every experience has the potential to teach us something new, good or bad. He used to sing me Tom Petty's "I Won't Back Down" in college when I would call him, worried about a test or a game. It's obvious to me that as far as Dad goes, my dad ranks among the best. I can plainly see that having a father that purposefully instills resilience, kindness, and compassion into his children is a rare thing. Dad had a hand in every single aspect of who I am as a person. He made me into the teacher and coach that I am today, and he pushed me to grow into a better person. Kayla, Dad was so proud of you. He was proud of your bravery, your fierce determination, and your independence. He loved to brag on you. I don't know if you remember this, but in his Father of the Bride speech, he described your outlook on life as a football fullback. You look straight ahead, you knock down whoever needs to get blocked, and you get the job done. I know you will carry these traits forward with everything you do in life, and you will always be his K-Bear. Mom, I don't even know what to say, besides Dad loves you so much. Your 40-plus year relationship showed us what goes into a healthy marriage. You emulated hard work and compassion. I always loved hearing stories from Cortland State. You two were the true definition of dream team. I will be forever grateful. You gave us the opportunity to travel together as a family this past Christmas. And I hope you continue to travel and enjoy retirement, as Dad will always be with you. He loved his family, and he was so proud of his nieces, nephews, brothers, and sisters. He often talked about how much closer he felt to his siblings through taking care of Grandma and Grandpa at the end of his lives. And I know this has been touched on, but once a year, per tradition, Dad crowded every Binggeli into his grandma's living room, and he forced us to go around the room and give thanks. Some took it seriously than others, but I can say with certainty that this year, when it comes my turn in the circle, I will tell my family how thankful I am for having a father that raised my sister and I to think of others first, to take pride in everything we do, and always give 100% of ourselves to those we love. Though it wasn't nearly enough, I'm thankful for the time we had. I'm thankful I was raised by a man that was truly larger than life. While at home this past July, I found a random notepad on which Dad had scribbled down a list of 5 goals. To honor him, I would like to promise, in front of all of you, to live the rest of my days with these 5 goals in mind. I charge all of you here today to do the same. Number 1, take time for myself. Number 2, ask the hard questions. What is serving me? What is draining me? What am I grateful for? Number 3, always be a student and continue to grow. Number 4, move with grace and not force. Number 5, allow myself to always be present in the moment. As for you, Dad, if you promise to keep an eye out for all of us down here, I promise I won't get mad if you start to feel proud of me. Someday, I'll be able to watch a Bills game and not feel guilty for watching without you. Thank you for your unconditional love and giving spirit. I can't wait till we meet again.
Growing up with 2 teachers and coaches, we usually had a book in hand to occupy us, waiting for one practice to end and another to begin. After high school, I always relied on Dad for recommendations. He usually had a good spy, shoot 'em up, or a history novel on deck for me. Whenever I'd call, "Oh, Kay, did you get to the part with the polar bear yet?" "Oh, why'd it go away?" Sorry. Or how crazy was that intro? Clearing 32 guys out of that house in 2 minutes. One of his favorites was Unbroken, the biography of Louis Zamperini. I had to look that up and make sure I didn't mess it up, and I still did. An Olympic runner, POW, and philanthropist. I think Dad appreciated this story so much because he identified so closely with Louis. As a young man, Louis had all sorts of run-ins with law enforcement, and he turned his focus on running and becoming an elite athlete. After competing in the 1936 Olympics, Louis enlisted in the Air Force and was subsequently gunned down over the Pacific. At a point in his 47 days on an inflatable lifeboat, Louis's determination for survival took over. Reading. Louis was furious at the sharks. He had thought that they had an understanding. The men would stay out of the sharks' turf, the water, and the sharks would stay off theirs, the raft. That the sharks had taken shots at him when he had gone overboard, when the raft had been mostly submerged after the strafing, had seemed fair enough. But their attempt to poach men from their reinflated life raft struck Louis as a dirty pool. He stewed all night, scowled hatefully at the sharks all day, and eventually made a decision. If the sharks were going to try to eat him, he was going to try and eat them. Louis and his fellow airmen were rescued, only to be bounced from one prison camp to another, enduring unbelievable hardship and testing their will to survive. Written at a Morey prison camp, Louis found himself thinking of the moment at which he had woken up in the sinking hull of the Green Hornet. The wires that had trapped him a moment earlier, now inexplicably gone, and he remembered the Japanese bombers swooping over the rafts, riddling them with bullets, yet not a single bullet had struck him, Phil, or Mac. He had fallen into unbearably cruel worlds, yet he had borne them. When he turned these memories in his mind, the only explanation he could find was one in which the impossible was possible. Later in life, Louis devoted his time to at-risk youth, instilling forgiveness as a core value in young people. The tenacity and sheer grit, repeated time and again in Louis' story, really magnifies the values that Dad held paramount. He truly lived through perseverance, dedication, and grinding it out. In the weight room, on the field, or in the classroom, he motivated those around him by example. The extra reps and added work to push past comfort, rooting for the underdog, and a quest to do better than yesterday. I challenge you to keep his memory safe, to take care of yourself, approach the world with courage and strength, and keep the resolve to do the right thing. Thank you.
Now, as this celebration draws to a close, let us join once more in prayer. Most loving God, we thank you for this time together, celebrating Bob Binggeli's life. We remember all the seeds he planted in our lives, and we are grateful. Now we ask your blessing, that we may nurture the growth of these seeds within us. And we ask your blessing, that we might also plant new seeds of caring in others' lives, our family, our students, our co-workers, neighbors, friends. Honoring Bob's legacy until we are all reunited in our heavenly home. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen. Let us go now in the peace of God, rejoicing in all we shared with Bob through the years. Amen.
Nothing, B. See Ray Tajan? Ray Tajan was right next to you. Remember Ray? Right down right now. He's got wearing the jacket off the floor.